Hola, hola. Hello, everyone. Please, before start anything, just confirm that the audio sounds good because in the last streaming we had some problems with the audio and I want to be sure that everything is working as expected. So if anyone just can confirm that the audio is working, we can start. Oh, awesome, fantastic. So, welcome everybody. I hope that you are enjoying this week. It's a very, very interesting week with a full set of videos, content, demos, and a lot of stuff coming from Bill. Please, I want to know what is the most exciting news that you have read or you have seen in these days. And we are having today the streaming because I don't want to use Collide and do the streaming yesterday because yesterday some teammates, David Ortinau and Shane, had other streamings, and for that I decided to use break the normal day that we are doing some streamings that are on Wednesday and move it to today on Thursday. So sorry about that, but I hope that well, you forget about that soon because today's streaming is very excited because what we are going to do is just take a look and review some of the news that had been presented for Xamarin Forms. And yeah, we are going to talk about, I don't know if you had take a look, but we are going to take a look with demos and code to things like brushes, that at the end is the possibility of use gradients everywhere in Xamarin Forms. We are going to take a look to shapes, be able to draw basic shapes like rectangles, ellipses, circles, and also, of course, more complex shapes that we are going to see. We are going to take a look to the new tab view control that is upcoming in Xamarin Forms 4.8. Also, we are going to take a look to the new app bar control. That is another control, another new control that will allow you to customize everything in the app bar. And of course, probably you have know about Maui. And I'm really excited to take a look and mm, just discuss a little bit what are the main changes, take a look to the main difference with forms, and maybe see a little bit of code. Probably what I want to see more is explain what will be the new renderers architecture and what are the main difference with forms, and of course what are the benefits, because if we are changing it is of course because have some benefits. So welcome everybody. I'm going to start sharing my screen and we are going to start taking a look to some code and demos. Please participate as much as possible in the chat. I would love to know, what are you feeling with the build, what are your feedback about everything that we are seeing. If you miss something, I don't know, if you taking a look to the shapes API, miss something, please share your comment in the chat. And of course, in Maui, I will love to know what is your feedback, your opinion. So let's go. Okay, so now I think that you are seeing my screen. I have several demos ready to show. So I don't know if you have any preference now. Please share in the chat, and if not, I think that maybe we can go in order, but in order by name don't have much sense. Maybe have more logic to go use it rating in the time, because the first thing that will appear are brushes and shapes, This will appear in Xamarin Forms 4.7. Then we will have tab view and app bar in 4.8. And the last thing that probably we are going to see is MAUI, and spend more time just seeing what is MAUI and what are the main difference with forms and all this stuff. Sounds good? Okay, so we are going to start, for example, with brushes. It's something that will arrive in Xamarin Forms 4.7. And what we are going to do is use compile the code directly in Core Gallery. Remember that Core Gallery is the sample that we use internally to just play with everything and test every property and validate all stuff. And while I'm compiling, probably I'm going to just move to the browser and navigate to the Xamarin Forms, and then later in the MAUI repo to see some of the issues. Well, are not issues at the end, are just specs, and take a look to the spec definition with all the properties and all the stuff that we can spec in this change. Okay, so while this is preparing everything, now it's downloading Nugget package and all this stuff. Let me move to the browser, and we are going to start with brushes. So let's take a look to the API definition. Well, we will not just spend too much time seeing things related with the internal implementation. I want to just share more how you will use this API in the future and the impact that could have or not in the actual API. So in this case, when we are talking about brushes, we are talking about have different options to create different brushes. A brush at the end is just a definition to paint an area with some specific color definition. We will have solid color brush to just paint an area with a solid color. Then we will have a linear gradient brush that will paint the area with a gradient, in this case with a gradient with a line defined between different gradient axes. So you specify any numbers of colors and the location of every color to use define how the linear gradient will be. And we also will expose a radial gradient brush that at the end is paints an area with a radial gradient that well, is a circle along a focal point to define the gradient behavior. So these are the new APIs. You will have solid color brush, linear gradient brush, and radial gradient brush. To define the solid color brush, you only need one property, that is the color. To define the linear gradient brush, you need to define what is the start point and the end point. Based on this point, the linear gradient will go from one direction or other. We will see this better then in code. Let me just start deploying the sample. And then, oh, this is huge. Okay. And then with the radial gradient brush, you need to specify what is the center point, and then the radius x and y to define how big will be the radius. How will this look? Well, you know that now in Xamarin Forms we have a visual element that is a base class in Xamarin Forms. So that means that properties defined in visual element apply to all the rest of the views in Xamarin Forms. And in visual element, we have defined the background color, that at the end is just a color. So for that, you can use an entry or a grid, define a background color, and you can change and modify the color of the view. what we will do have here is that we'll have a background property. This background property will support a brush, so you can use a solid color brush if you want to define just a solid color. You can define, of course, a linear gradient brush and a radial gradient brush, and this will be available in all the Xamarin Forms views. That means that you can use, in this case, gradients everywhere. You can use gradients, of course, in a grid or some layout. That is probably the more common scenario, or where have more sense. But if you want to apply, I don't know, a gradient in an entry or a search bar, you will be able to do that. Of course, you will be able to manage this in C#, in XAML, and you can also style and define the gradients using CSS. What are the backward compatibility? What is the impact in the actual Xamarin Forms API? Well, before we was using the background color will become deprecated. So you will see a warning using it. You still will be able to use it, but we are moving forward to use the new background property. So let me move now to see some demos. And after see the demos, I will love to stop a little bit using some code of some of the demos. So let me start with this gradient views. This gradient views is a easy sample. As you can see here, we have a big part of the Xamarin Forms views, layouts, basic controls like, I don't know, buttons and labels, other more complex layouts like pickers, scroll view, list views, collection views. Now we are defining a red background color, so this is what you are seeing here. But using the picker, we can just define a solid color brush. So nothing changed because, well, we are applying a solid color. So we are applying a red solid color, and we have exactly the same result that we had before using background color. So that means that in the future, when you update to this version, including brushes, remember that we will deprecate background color. If you want to avoid the warning for using a deprecated API, the only thing that you need to do is replace background color to background. The effect and the appearance will be exactly the same. So until now, nothing really excited, but let's move to use a linear gradient brush. And here is where the interesting things appear. So, well, you can use frame with, of course, corner radius, with shadows. You can use, as you can see, brushes in all the controls, entry, editors, all the controls. You can define different kinds of linear gradients, so can be in different orientations. And of course, you have also the possibility to use radial gradient brush. This is interesting because, you can use all the brushes in all the views, and this gives you different possibilities. And of course, you can use, I don't know, now we have set some brushes, but we can just remove the brushes. In this case, what I did internally in the code is set null in background property, and we just remove the brush. So this is the first important topic about brushes. It is applied in visual element, and for that affects to all the Xamarin Forms views. And when I told that affecting all Xamarin Forms views, you can also use brushes in the navbar, and you can use brushes also in page. What you are seeing here in the master page is a content page, and I'm setting the background property of the content page. So, well, you can have in this case gradients in page, in navbar. Now I think that I cannot go back in this sample, so let me launch again core gallery. In this time it will be very quickly, and let's continue seeing some more samples. So we navigate to the brushes gallery. Okay, so well, you can use in navigation page and also in tabs. For example, we have here two tabs. In this case, we're using just the remember that in the case of the navigation bar, we have the bar background color. Well, this will be replaced with bar background, and the same will happen. So in this case, with the tabs. So yeah, let's continue taking a look to other samples. Solid color brush converter. This is interesting because let me start use navigating and showing some code. So let me go to controls, and now I want to go to the where are the gallery page, and here this page is used this is the main view, and we are now in the converter, that is this page. So what is interesting in this page? Well, is a quick demo. The only thing interesting is that you can use background color, that is this effect, and you can set exactly the same. Background red, background color red. As you can see, the effect is exactly the same in both cases. And then let's play a little bit with points. The API definition of brushes is exactly the same that you can see in WPF. So if you know this API, you know exactly how this API works. And in this case, this sample is just playing with the different points that you can use from a linear gradient brush. So remember that to define a linear gradient brush, you need to define different gradient stops. So at the end, the gradient stop is just say, hey, what will be the color and the offset. Imagine the sample case that, for example, is this offset. You define from 0 to 1 when we will apply this specific color. And then with the start point and end point, we can just define what is the initial point and the end point, and could be, for example, 0, 0, 1, 1, so it's an horizontal one, or we can go in this direction. So at the end, we have exactly the same definition. That is what we have here, many different linear gradient brushes defining the results of the page. But at the end, when we are using, in this case, we're using a grid to just draw the brush, we can see that well, the orientation in all the cases is different. So yeah, you can just create linear gradient brush in horizontal, vertical, with any kind of angle. So well, you can play with that. To see a little bit better what's happening with linear gradient brush, I'm going to open this Explorer. So this Explorer is using a frame. You will see it because we are using corner reviews and shadows here. But of course, we can define a solid color. This is what we have in Xamarin Forms until now. And then let me start defining a brush. So for example, I'm defining two gradient stops. That is, we are going to use two colors. The first color will be this blue, and the second one will be this other one. So you can see here what is the gradient. We can move and change the the endpoint and start point. And of course, in this case, well, it's just a frame, so you will be able to still continue using the corner radius with brushes, and of course also the shadow using brushes. So yeah, we of course have no limits using colors, so this could be as cool or as horrible as you want. But well, we have all these possibilities, and the same happens with the radial one. Let me start just using a solid color, and then if we define different colors, let's use red, for example, in this case, and this one, I don't know if you can see, but we have the center. Let's use other color to see it better. Well, now you can see it better. You can see the radial gradient brush in this case working, and again we can use we can still continue using the rest of the properties of any view. In this case we are using a frame, so you will be able to continue using corner radius if it has shadows or not. More stuff. Let's start taking a look to CSS. So we have a CSS playground here. So let me navigate to this playground that at the end is used. Well, we have a grid. The grid is binded to a background brush, and this background brush is just a property that we have binded in this case in a view model. So we are just binding this CSS definition for the gradient to this grid. And what can we do? Well, we can just play with the different definition of the colors, and as you can see, all this will just change, and you can play with different colors. This could be a 90%, and as you can see, it's affecting to the opacity of the second color. And to play with that better, we have here an explorer just playing with different CSS definitions. You can see here a linear gradient definition with different angles, and the same with a radial gradient. In this case, what is in, the colors are the same, but what we are changing is in this case is a circle, so we are positioning in the center. This is a circle at the left, and this is at the right. So we are changing the positioning of just in this case the brush, the radial brush is horrible, but it's just to see that it's working. But well, you can see the potential. So we can just take a look in Dribble and see a big amount of designs. Today's gradients has make a comeback. Today we can see in mobile design brushes here and there everywhere. So for example, this simple sample is using brushes in all this background, but it's also using brushes in other parts of the application. And until now, you needed a custom renderer for that, or use some of the amazing plugins from the community. I don't know, like X graphics from Brett Johnson that I'm seeing now here in the picture, or Pancake View from Steven. But well, the idea is that you will be able to use brushes directly in Xamarin Forms core without any dependency, and most important thing, you can use it everywhere. If you want to use in an app bar, use it. If you want to use in an entry, use it. So this is the first thing that will arrive in Xamarin Forms. Will arrive soon in Xamarin Forms 4.7, and with this we will have other interesting functionality that is related with shapes. So let's take a look to the shapes while the project is loading. I just will go to the API. So why shapes? So for different reasons. One of them is because well, we have box view or frame to use play with corners, and I have seen very interesting use of box view to create some specific shapes, just playing with the corner radius and all this stuff. But at the end, you cannot do everything. In this case, for example, to create this conversation bubble is directly impossible without a custom renderer. This dotted line is also, well, complex to do directly in forms today, and well, just the circle, yeah, the circle, it's a easy one just using, for example, box view, but a UI not too much with a high difficulty to reproduce, or with a high complexity. In this case, was hard to reproduce without the use of shapes. And the other thing that where shapes is very interesting is in the create X platform controls. I know that probably many of you use, for example, I don't know, a content view with some bindable properties, and inside the content view you play with different stuff. With that, you can create really beautiful and crazy things, but just using, basic base of UI elements to define wherever you want a different basic objects like circle, lines, and all this stuff, but as complex uh, path and polygons that you need is interesting to cover all the case, just doing a combination of different shapes. So for that appear the shapes API. The API is, as you can see here, again based on the UWPF shapes. So if you know or have worked or played with the UWPF, congratulations, because you know perfectly what is the shape API. So let me start compiling the project again. I just will use Android again because I have the simulator open, but let me say that the Brushes API that we have seen some minutes ago will work, of course, on Android, iOS, and Windows, and the same will happen in this case with shapes. So what will include the shapes API? So by default, we'll have a base class shape with some properties that will be available on the shapes, like what will be the fill color, what would be the border, the border color, the border width, the border thickness, and using all these base properties, you will have ellipse. Well, it's probably the most simple shape. You only need to define a size and then a color or a border. Then we have the rectangle. The most important properties, or the exclusive properties related with the rectangle, are radius x and radius y. And this is interesting to create rounded corners in the rectangle, specifying the different options in these properties. So, for example, in this case, setting the radius x, you can see that you can get different effects in the corners. Then we have a polygon. The polygon is well, it's interesting because it's just a connection of different lines, just closing all the points. So this will sound very familiar when we talk about polyline, but in polyline we are not closing the last point with the first one. And well, we have the collection of the points that define the polygon. In this case, you can see all the points and what is the polygon that we are drawing. Then we have lines, of course. Well, a line is just a line between 2 points. So what we need to define a line? The 2 points. In this case, we are using x1 and e1 for the field point, and x2, a2 for the second point. And well, you can just define all these properties to draw a line. The polygon is very close to the the polyline is very close to the polygon, but as you can see, using the same points, we are not closing the last point with the first one. So well, it's an interesting case for some designs. I have reviewed a lot of designs in Dribble to use see how this fits in all case, and I have seen some case where the polyline is also interesting in some case. And then we have path. The path is the most complex but also the most versatile shape that you can use, because well, it allows you to use a geometry, and with the geometry you can use a composition of line, ellipses, and different rectangles, and you can compose a very, very complex shape. So this is what we have with Shapes API. And then the last thing, but also very interesting, is that we will have in visual element a new property called clip. Clip will have a geometry, and with the geometry we can use different geometries. You can see here all the geometries. So you can, for example, use an image, clip the image with an ellipse geometry, and we can pass from the common image to an image, in this case using the ellipse. So take image with different shapes, the typical rounded image is very easy doing this, but of course you can do the same with other Xamarin Forms views. So this is really, really, really interesting. The last thing, styling. Well, you can define shapes using C# and XAML code, and then you can use XAML styles, or again you can use CSS to style shapes. So let's take a look to the to the gallery, and let's know what we can do with shapes. Shapes again will arrive in Xamarin Forms 4.7. So you will have ellipses. So this is the very basic ellipse. This is an ellipse with without fill, but you can define also the color of the border. Let me take a bit of water. If you have any question. This is a good moment. And of course you can use different properties, for example, to define an ellipse with fill color and also a stroke color, that is the border color, but define a stroke dash, so you can have this dotted stroke around the ellipse. So yeah, things start coming more and more interesting, mixing different properties. As you can imagine, the same happens with the rectangle. So it's very close to the first case with the ellipse. The only difference is that the possibility to use the remember the let me go to the API to explain this. But remember that we have to reduce X and I, and is what we are using here to define this beautiful corner radius. So then, well, we have more basic case like lines. You can play with the line color, the line, if the line is dashed or not, with the stroke of the line and all this stuff. The same happens with polylines. And the most complex case that we are going to see until jump to the path are the polygons. So well, you can define different polygons and with different options. About joining lines, you have different properties to just define what will be the shape of the end of the line, and the same with the joining. We are joining here two lines, and you can define, for example, take a look to this rounded joining, and well, you can define different options to join different lines. So I don't know if you want to take a look to the code. Let me move quickly to see some samples. So I'm going to gallery page, and in this case inside the shapes gallery, well, the last sample is used. I have a grid that is the yellow color, and just place an ellipse inside the grid, and well, I want to just fill all the space. So this is just a test. simple test to validate that everything is working. But now let's take a look to the code. So ellipse, you can define an ellipse like this, defining the size and the fill color. Then you can define what is the border color and the border width. And then you have properties to define what is the dash array and the days offset, so you can get these dayset lines that you have seen here. Okay, so then we will have the rectangle. For the rectangle, well, we have the same properties more or less. The only difference is that you also have the radius x and radius a. Then we have lines. Where are the line gallery? So, well, you can define different points. You can define the color, if dashed or not. The same with polyline. Remember that the most important property in this case is the points, the collection of points. Of course, you can define the same collection with C#. In many of these cases, like we have seen before with brushes, we have some converters to allow you to define, in this case, points in a simple way using Xamarin code. The same with the polygon. So, well, until here, all the basic shapes. In all the platforms, we are using native APIs. And I have talked about this a little bit because, well, probably many of you know Skia Sharp. Based on Skia, that well, it's an API that in this case fits very well because allow us to draw these things very well. You can find an interesting project called X Graphics that is mostly the same that we have seen here, but using Skia. But why we're not using Skia in this case? Well, because Skia includes the Skia Sharp library plus the native libraries, and this includes size in the core and in the Xamarin Forms application that probably not all of you will need, because if you don't need to use the shapes API, you will not love to see how the size of your application is increased. So at the moment we are using native APIs for different reasons, but this is one of the most important ones. Skia Sharp is really an interesting case of using in this case, but I think that this could live but in a different API. So we can use, if we want to use Skia drawing, we can just include another Nugget package in our application and use it. But what you will find the Xamarin Forms core is using the native APIs in every platform. So we have seen everything except the path, because the path is in another branch. So let me move again to the folder and open all other of the projects. That is this one. And we are going to see path, that is of course the most versatile shape that we can see. So I'm taking a look to the chat sometimes to see if there are any question, any feedback. Not at the moment, but remember that you can write whatever you want. If you have any feedback, if this is interesting for you, or if this API is not interesting for you, or if you expect this in another way, or whatever you have in mind, I will love to read, because as I always share with you, all your feedback is what helps us to know if we are covering your expectation and if we can improve. So okay, let's wait to compile this. So while this is preparing everything, let me move to the next topic, and I will I will jump to the Xamarin Forms 4.8 version, where you will see the tab view and you will see the app bar. So what are this stuff? So well, you can use tabs in Xamarin Forms in several ways. You have the tab page, you have shell, and you can create with shell really complex application structures. But what is more complex to do in the current tab systems is the customization. So what's happened is I want fab button or a different tab, of if I want corner radius here or there, or if I want, I don't know, to animate every time that I change the tab, I don't know, I need different transitions between the tabs, or I don't need any transition. I just want directly change the content without any kind of animation. So well, this is where today we offer some options, but you will not be able to replicate, for example, this user interface that you have seen here, and is where we are trying to put all the effort in tabs. In fact, we are trying to just create the most complete and definitive tab control that you can see to cover all your expectation and all the requisites that probably you are seeing today in mobile designs, you know. And then the app bar is very close to the previous one because it's mostly the same, but in this case related with the navigation bar. So many of you wanted custom content in the navigation bar, and for that we included the title view. But the title view have some limitations based on, you know, the native APIs and the native stuff. You cannot fit all the navbar size. You cannot. You have some, you know, margins and side limitations, and again you cannot customize everything. If you want, for example, a transparent navbar, as you can see here, well, you need a custom renderer. And if you want, I don't know, an navbar with a different height, to put another common scenario, again, you need different customizations to the navbar. So the idea with the app bar is allow to customize everything. And by the way, introducing this new stuff, use covering and allowing you to covering some scenarios in a easy way. So I don't know, customize the title, the content, the back button, all this will be possible. And of course you will have more events, commands and stuff, for example, when the back button is tapped and stuff like that. We will see this now, but before that, let me continue and complete the shapes demo, because we still need to see what's happened with path. So this is path. Let me go to the code and try to use review what we have at the same time that we are taking a look to the code. So we can navigate here to the path. This is the path gallery. So well, this looks like a line, but it's a very simple path. This could be a polygon, but at the end it's just a path. To define a path, you can use the data property, and well, this is a converter that we are using to allow very complex, path definition using a string. So for example, the health indicates that we are drawing a line, and well, there are different sentences. But the interesting case here is that the API is the same that in libpf, so you can find many of these paths outside, and there are also tooling that just generate this path directly. So I don't know, for example, if you know what's the name exactly. It's a tooling from Syncfusion that give you is free. So it's a tooling from Syncfusion that gives you a crazy amount of icons. And of course, you can export this icon using image, for example, a PNG. But you can use export to generate a path. And you can just copy the path and paste the path in the data, and you see the path directly in Xamarin Forms. So this is one of the possibilities, and the other one is create a path geometry that accept different figures. And remember that we have before different elements to define, line segments. We can define also option with, in this case, different beziers, different, ellipses geometry. In this case is just for ellipses drawing. Then we can use overlap different shapes. We can decide what's happening with the intersections. If we cut them or overwrite the intersection. And well, we can of course combine different elements to use play with the path. In this case, we are drawing a star, well, just using different lines. And well, again, this last case are really complex one. Take a look to this string. This is huge. But well, we are drawing a beautiful heart, and all this is drawn with this string that we set in the data. So as you can see, yeah, it's the most complex shape, but allow you to do really crazy things, and will probably cover all your or everything that you need. Will be able with a path. You have different spec properties to the path, like in image. Well, in fact, you have this property in all the shapes. Of course, you can play with different layouts to align the shape wherever you want. We have different converters that let me take a look to the converter here. No, this is not this sample. Just a second. Is this one? Yes. So you can have different converters, and you have the render transform property. The render transform, this is exactly the same path, but as you can see, have not the same size, and definitely it not looks like the same. This is because we are using transformation in one of the paths. And now let me jump to the transformation playground, because another very crazy thing that you can do with any shape, well, in any path, is use transformations. So you can use, well, this is let me go to the gallery, and well, this is a path, very simple. It's a path with a rectangle geometry, where, well, we are defining this rectangle. So as you can see, we can apply different transformation based on rotation, scale, skew, translate. So yeah, we can just play with this rotation, with the scale. Let me move to the skew, for example, and we can translate. Yeah. So whoa, this is really a big amount of possibilities and options that you can use, not only to draw something specific that you need. Of course, you have basic shapes for complex one, and you have this path stuff, and then you can use play and transform, rotate, scale the path if you need and want it. Of course, again, everything is implemented in Android, iOS, and Windows. You can use AutoLoad to play and modify all the path properties. You can animate, for example, the transformation of the shape. So another big API, but I think that will cover many interesting case and basic case. And I have the feeling that will be a big step forward to create X-platform controls and just create a composition of different, I don't know. And then, for example, a slider is aligned with a circle, right? So yeah, and then you can use a gesture to detect the touch, and well, just imagine how you can create custom controls in a really easy way just using this stuff. Okay, that's cool. So my plan is just to jump to other stuff. For example, tap view. I'm going to just give 1 minute to think if you have any question while I drink a little of water. No questions? Okay, so let's continue taking a look to more stuff that will arrive in this case to Xamarin Forms again. By the way, many of you probably know the announcement of Maui. All these APIs will be directly in Maui. So yeah, you will have in Maui, of course, shape, brushes, and all this stuff will be available by default in Maui. Okay, and the same will happen with this tab view. So while I load the project and compile, as I'm doing always, I'm going to move and take a look to the API. So we will have a tab view, and a tab view can include tab view items. So of course we have a crazy amount of properties, but the interesting topics are: you can define directly tab views directly or using an item source. You can have lazy loading of the content of the tabs. You can have cyclical tabs. Oh, this is using another emulator. Let me close this one. Okay. You can customize everything. You can customize the tab item content, the tab strip, the bar where appear the different icons of the tab. You can customize the tab content, but also you will be able to customize the tab transition. You will be able to customize the animation that happens when a tab is selected, and the animation that happens when the tab is unselected. You can customize, you will have batch support, an indicator with a number or whatever, and you can customize everything from the batch. You can customize again the animation that happens when the batch appears, or the animation that happens when the batch disappears. Of course, you will have events and commands to manage all this stuff, plus visual states, plus other stuff. So let's take a look to the sample. So, well, this is a very basic tab. So by default, when you run the tab, that will run everywhere. Of course, will run in Android, iOS, and Windows, but also could run on other platforms. You will have a default appearance and default template that we are going to use in every tab. So this is the default behavior in iOS, but the look and feel is the native one in the case of iOS. So as you can see, I can just drag to navigate to other tabs or click in the tabs. And we can define a tab with different icons and text. This is the basic case. Let me go to the code to the basic case. Yeah, it's this one. So, well, this is the code. We have a tab view. Inside the tab view, we are defining two tab view items. Please, if the font size is too small, let me know. I don't know. I think that you can see it well. I think so. And then the tab view item have a content property where you define what is the content of the tab. In this case, well, we are defining user grid with the content. In this case, is a label, but the same in the second one. But well, this is simple. Then this is fine, but the first and most important question is how well, of course, you can define the same using C# code. Okay. But the most important question is if one of the main objectives of this control is how to customize everything. How I I can customize the tab, because well, the content, you can define different content and it's easy. But let's see how you can customize the tab. You cannot have only text tabs and then bang, custom tabs. And as you can see, the appearance of the tab, well, is totally different from the previous case. And let's take a look. So we have the code here, and what we are doing here is the following. We have the tab view control and the tab view items defined inside the tab view, but we are defining a control template. So the tab view items have a control template property, and you can define a template with the content that you want. In this case, I'm using an image with a label, but if you want only a text, or if you want any other kind of content, you can set the content that you want here. And well, we are setting that in the style of every tab item that we are using in every tab. Okay, and for that we are seeing different styles. You can see that we change the color of the selected tab, and that's because you will be able to access to different properties and define different properties. For example, what is the text color for the tab, and what is the selected color when the tab is selected, what is the color. The same happens with a big amount of other properties. So you can customize everything related with the text and the icon by default. If you want a custom font, a custom font size, a custom whatever, you can use it. But also you can define a custom font family, font size, and whatever you need for the selected one. So you can use with simple properties customize what's happening with the selected tab. Using the same, you can create, in this case, we are setting the same control template in all the tabs. So we are customizing the tabs in all the case, but you can define different control templates for every tab, or just for one specific tab. And in this case, you can get something like this. So, the logic is exactly the same. Let me move to this case where we have a control template using all the tabs, and in the center one, in this case, we're using an image button, that is this button that you can see here. So, you can customize the tabs, and of course, you can use the tab events or the image button events to do whatever you need to do in this case. More things. Cyclical tabs. So by default, the tabs have a cyclical property set to false. So as you can see, I cannot scroll to the left in the first tab, or for example in the last one, I cannot continue scrolling. But if I set that the tabs is cyclical, from the first one I can navigate to the last one, and from the last one I can navigate again to the first one. So just cyclical tabs. You have lazy loading content. So for example, if you disable the lazy loading, that means that we have in memory all the tabs content. As you can see here, all the tabs have content. So we can navigate to the tabs and anything changes. But if we said that we want to use lazy loading, what is happening is that now we only have in memory the first tab. At the beginning that we are trying to scroll and we need the second one, you can see that is appearing here. We have the second one loaded in memory too, and when we release the panning and we complete the swipe gesture, we are seeing the tab content too, the second tab, and is the tab that is in memory, and the rest again are used disposed. So you can have lazy loading, and if you have a big amount of tabs only have in memory the tab that the user or the tabs that the user is seeing in screen. More stuff. Let me see what we are going to see now. Well, you can manage the width of the tabs. You can manage if you want to see the tabs. Well, if you want the tabs in the top or in the bottom, and also you can manage if you want to see the tab strip. Because what's happening if we hide the tab strip? Well, we have a beautiful cursor at the end. So well. Maybe it's an interesting case in some case. The same will happen with the content. If you don't have content, or so if you don't define, for example, here you don't define the content, well, you can tap and execute the commands of the tabs. Well, will not scroll and navigate to the tab because have nothing to show, have no content. Of course, you can create nested tabs. As complex as you want and nesting as much as you want. You can have custom indicator to the tabs. In this case, is this circle, and well, it's other interesting case. Probably you had noticed that you can also manage the page of the tab in every tab. So yeah, you have a tab and you can customize what's happening when this appears and appears. By default, you have a beautiful animation, but you can disable it or you can customize the animation. Let me take a look to how you can customize this animation. And it's because when you are using, for example, in this case, where in the tab budget sample, let me navigate to the sample. We have here defined what is the page color, what is the page background color, and all this stuff. And by default, we are using an animation that is implementing this interface, batch animation, with two methods: when the batch appear and when the batch disappear. So you can create a custom class for writing this interface, implement this interface. So with this interface, you can use Xamarin Forms animations, and that's interesting because you only need to define, of course, animation one time to all the platforms with very well-known APIs, in this case the Xamarin Forms animation APIs, to define what's happening when the batch appear and disappear, and that's very cool. And well, we have more options. Scroll tabs. What's happening if we have a big amount of tabs? We can use allow to scroll, as you can see, directly to the tabs. We are in tab 6, but when we are going back, we are not seeing tab 6 now, and we are now see tab 1 and tab 4. So yeah, well, a simple behavior, but probably is necessary in some case. And let me go to some of my favorite parts. What's happened with the tab transition? Because yeah, we have a beautiful transition between tabs. Of course, we have a proper deal to disable this transition, so we can just swap the content directly. But look at this. Crazy, right? We are instead of using an horizontal translation, we are using a vertical one because we can. So the same happens with the tabs. We have, in this case, let me navigate to the correct. We have and probably this will change the name to it, tab transition. But well, we have an interface with two methods when the selection is changing, so when you are scrolling or swiping, and when the selection change, so when you release the touch, or in this case I'm using the mouse, but when you release, and what's happening in this case. So by default we have a beautiful transition effect that you can see here, okay? But if you want to customize the transition between page, let me navigate to this sample. Where are you? Where are you? Well, I'm not finding the sample, so let me go here. It's custom transition. Yeah. So yeah, you can see here that we create a class, in this case custom transition, with implementing the interface. These are the two methods, and as you can see here, I'm creating an animation, adding different stuff, and committing the animation. Of course, we receive what is the current and the next tab, so you can just transform whatever you want in this stuff, and to use it, you only need to go to the tab and say, hey, I'm going to use a tab transition, and the tab transition will be this one. And that's all. You can customize the tab transition. So this is cool, but also you can customize what's happening when you tap every tab. So you have also a tab view animation. Take a look to this because animation is very small. I don't know if you will appreciate it, but we are just doing a rotation, a rotation very smooth and quickly of the icon of the tab. Also, we are playing with the opacity and the scale of the icon, but this again is very quickly. So I don't know if you are appreciating this animation, but well, how are we doing this? So let me move to eTap view item animation. Again, an interface. Selected, deselected. What will you receive? The tab. So here I just created a sample when I customize, where I implement the interface, selected and deselected. And this is animation that I mentioned before. I play with the rotation, the opacity, and the scale when I'm selecting, and to use it where I want, because well, you can set to all the tabs, or well, you can go as crazy as you want. If you want to create a custom animation for every tab, you can do it too, but you'll need to go to the tab. Hey, the tab animation is this one, and voila, you can set the tab. So yeah, we are continue playing with that. We have the spec created recently, is this one. We created 2 days ago for the build announcement. And yeah, I'm loving how much love is receiving this spec, and the feedback that we are receiving. And we will continue working on this stuff for Xamarin Forms 4.8. You will find more properties and stuff that I'm not able to share now because it's work in progress, but you will be able to also customize the tab icon position, or you will be able, well, I think that I have a sample where I have this implemented. Use a sec. Custom, where are you? It's not this one. Well, this is just the events. You know, when you scroll, when you tap, you have all the events. But if I remember, I have a sample using corner radius somewhere, but maybe, well, this is other tab, in this case top position, and in this case I'm disabling the transition between the tabs. Where are, I don't remember. So is this case? No, and well, I don't remember, but well, you will be able to apply corner radius to the tab strip, and you will be able also to apply also well, custom stuff to the tab strip. We will continue improving the control, doing more tests. As you have seen, we have several samples, but we need much more samples and more tests to validate everything. But I hope that we will have everything ready, and I am excited to share this in Xamarin Forms 4.8. By the way, I'm talking about TapView a lot with Shane, that is working in improved shell. You can find also an interesting, let me try to find quickly. So there are an interesting, really interesting, this one, spec that Shane created also yesterday about how to manage the workflow in using shell with complex and different routes of case. Like I know that for example the login is a common case, and how to use not to using a high abstraction. And I remember when, well, it's a cell item and then a cell section, and yeah, I know that sometimes I'm starting with shell cause some confusion. So well, we'll enable deep nested tabs, and as you can see, the naming will be very, very simple. And we are playing with the tab view, mixing with this, and well, the idea is to allow to use the tab view to enable case like this. But there are also deeper flyout customization, having the navigation list. That is also a very, very interesting concept. And well, the idea is to continue improving the API also of shell in forms. I'm talking about forms. Of course, you will find all this stuff already in Maui when it arrives. But yeah, it's a very interesting spec, and the idea is to use mix concept from shell and some of the concept that you have seen with this tab view using shell. So the tab view is very customizable. Yeah, well, that's the idea. One of the main objectives, and one of the main things that we want to achieve using this tab view is allow you to create the tab that you need, whatever you need. If you need animation, use it. If you need transition, use it. If you need batch, use it. If you need, I don't know, corner radius, whatever you want, use it. Of course, you will be able to mix previous stuff in tab view. So you want a shape to define the icon, I don't know, a path to define the icon of the tab, because with the path you can animate everything. So you can animate it. The transformation is, you have much more possibilities than using directly any match, so well, you can start mixing that. If you want to use a gradient in the background of the tab strip, okay, you are up to use it. So that's the idea, allow you to customize everything. And in the same line, I'm going to close tab view. If you have any question, feedback, whatever, please share in the chat. But in the same line, we have the app bar concept. So let me go to the spec while I compile this. Well, at the moment, these are separate projects from core. You can see in the code that I'm using namespace. Of course, you will use directly app bar without namespace when we add this in Xamarin Forms. But at the moment are just separate projects because it's just all phase of experimenting and trying and improving everything. So, but you don't worry, because of course you will find this in the Xamarin Forms repo. But let me compile this. I'm switching the emulator again. Come on. Okay, and let me go to the API. Cool. And now I can use go to the app bar spec. And well, how many of you have tried to have a transparent navigation page, or well, navigation bar? Or how many of you have tried to, I don't know, include a custom search bar with a custom whatever you need? Oh no, I need the battery. Whatever you need in this case. Probably sometimes you have need something from the navbar that you cannot achieve without using custom render. And the idea with this API is just allow to customize everything from the navbar. Well, we have a big amount of properties to customize this. So if you want a bar with a different size with any content, you can do that, and also allow new experience in your application. So of course you will be able to use C#, XAML, and again styling using XAML or C#. And let's take a look to this. So we are work in progress to this. So again, probably the case is similar to the tab view. Some APIs, some things that you are seeing today could change a little bit, not too much, but could change. So this is the custom navbar. Well, it looks like the navigation page, I know, but well, in this case it's using the new app bar. It's the basic case. Of course, you can add different items, remove items, and add secondary items to the bar. And at the same time, you can use enable or disable the toolbar items. That's exactly the same that you have seen before, but you have more possibilities. You enable disable the toolbar items. Then, well, we include more events and more possibilities. Not only, of course, that you tap at one of the toolbar item. Also, if you tap at the back button and other stuff, will be available. But let's start with interesting samples. So, toolbar icons. You can change dynamically the icon, remove the icon, change the text, or just remove the text and set the icon. You can do whatever you want dynamically in runtime with every of the toolbar items. But then you want a crazy size in your toolbar, because you will include here XAML with I don't know, a search bar with a filter, with whatever you want. You can do it. You need a custom navbar with I don't know, a crazy background or whatever you need. Well, you can do a beautiful navbar in this way. You need you know, title view, crazy, with corner radius, with a different size, with, well, again, you can do it. That's the idea. The idea is just allow you to go to the app bar, set different properties to set the size, set different options to use, play with the title view, and add the content that you really need without restrictions. You can get all the size. You are yourself who set the margins, paddings, or whatever you need to define your UI, but you will not find any restriction in this case. And well, I'm not sure if we will include this stuff or other stuff that we're playing, but well, we are playing with some ideas. Like, for example, if we scroll, you have an appearing and disappearing scroll bar. Well, we are playing with different ideas like this. I think that well, it's an interesting case and common case, and it's a common scenario. So maybe you will see this stuff included, but well, cool chain. Okay. So well, this is a quickly look to the app bar. Will be mixed with shell again and with other stuff. And the idea is that you will be able to find it in Xamarin Forms 4.8. So in the order, you will find brushes, then shadows, then tab view, and then app bar. Well, of course, you will find more fixes, functionality, and other stuff. But from the new functionality that we have seen in this streaming, this is the timeline. Okay. So, well, I think that with this I cover more or less some of the main chains that you will find in Forms in the next releases. You have all this information in the wiki. We have roadmap section. So that's what I have said. You will find gradient paths and shapes in 4.7 soon, 4.8 tab view and app bar, and then you will find more stuff that is work in progress. So there are a lot of shell improvements that you will see based on the spec that we have seen before. So yeah, what do you think about all this stuff? What is your favorite functionality? Is something that you was expecting, or is something that you wanted for your development, or well, at the end you will not use it because it's not necessary in your applications? Please share your feedback. I will love to read whatever you have in mind about all this stuff. And if you have anything related with that and you want to discuss or talk about this later, remember that we open the specs, and we open the specs with the idea of get your feedback. And for example, in the tab view, we are including some properties news. In this case, Victor Hugo Garcia shared feedback about what is his idea about tabs and included some properties. There are properties that was included and have no sense because we can achieve the same with other properties or things like that. But there are other cases where have sent, and well, we include it. So if you, after this streaming, remember that you can access to all the specs, and if you have anything in your mind, your idea, and it's not covered by the spec, we really try to cover everything. In this case, in customization level, in tab view, app bar, etc. But if you have anything in mind that is not included or is necessary for your case or whatever, use the spec and write whatever you have in mind later, tomorrow, or when you can. Well, not in 3 months because probably the tab view will be out. But yeah, take your time and read the spec and answer whatever you have in mind. So I will close the Xamarin Forms part here, and I will move to other stuff. And in this case, I'm going to talk a little bit about .NET multi-platform application UI. So what's that? How many of you have read or know about that from Build News? Please share in the chat. So this was announced on Tuesday, and it's a framework for building native application for mobile, tablet, and desktop. So it's an evolution from Xamarin Forms, but had some important changes. For example, let's go to this table, and you can see interesting changes here. The first one is about platforms. So we will give functionality parity in Mac and Windows. Yes, that means that we want to have the same possibilities creating the same application in Android and Mac OS, for example. So there are interesting changes in the renderers. I don't know if we, yeah, well, we can talk about it a little bit, but we want to give the possibility to use different app models. In Forms, everything was very coupled and ready to work with MVVM. Remember, the bindable objects and the field property chain and all this stuff, and we want to really allow you to choose whatever you want in MAUI. So you will be able to use MVVM, you will be able to use MVU and other stuff in MAUI, and for that we are creating new renderers without core dependencies and with more decoupled. So we'll talk about that later. Other interesting new stuff is the support for multi-targeting, multi-window, and one of the most interesting cases is the single project. I don't know if you have seen about it, but well, we will be able to use just one project to work with Maui. And yes, probably you have seen it working in VS Code, so you will be able to use Visual Studio for Windows or Mac and VS Code to work with this single project. Then this will arrive with .NET 6 that will arrive in 2021, but before we will release some previews. And yeah, you also, apart from all the tooling that we have mentioned with VS for Windows and Mac, you will be get access to .NET CLI. Important question that I have seen repeated sometimes during these days. So what's happening with Xamarin Forms? Well, as you have seen, we will continue working and improving Xamarin Forms. We will continue fixing issues. We will continue including new functionality, and that will continue happen until Maui release in 2021. So when we release Maui, what will happen is that during 1 year we will continue supporting it, fixing important issues. But yeah, in this case, all the new stuff functionality will arrive to Maui. But well, that means that we will support Xamarin Forms until 2022. So yeah, this is one of the things that I want to share today, because I have seen this question repeated many times. So after that, let me move to the wiki. Let's take a quick look to the roadmap. So late this year, you will find a preview, the first preview of Maui, and you will find the new renderers in this preview that we are going to take a look later. We will also remove all stuff, obsolete APIs and stuff like that. And then you can find also the replacement of dependency service. And I'm going to talk about this later too. More later, then in 2021, we will introduce other interesting stuff like a new cross-platform live. All this stuff, I will just spend some minutes talking about all this stuff and why we are changing that and what is the meaning. We are moved the span layout option that probably just cause confusion to many of you. We will just improve the performance with working with Image using LiteX in the case of Android. When we're working with Image, we are going to improve the animations, and I will talk about this later. Do some improvements in behavior and triggers, and also we will replace the application properties. By the way, in the same year but later, you will find the Mac OS and Windows parity. So that means that stuff that will appear in 2021 will have the same functionality in Android, iOS, and all this stuff. So the first question about Maui is if do you like the name? Well, I really think that the official name, that is not the acronym, the .NET Multi-Platform App UI, is very explicit, and just with the name, you know more or less what this is. It's a multi-platform framework to build applications in different platforms using .NET, and it's something directly integrated and that you can find in .NET. About Maui, I really like it, but I don't know what's your opinion. In my case, I like it. It's short, sounds good, but well, I understand that probably will not be something that everybody likes. So yeah, give your feedback about what's your opinion about everything related with Maui. And one of the topics probably, what do you think about have everything in .NET? What do you think about the name? What do you think about the functionality? So yeah, please use the chat and share what do you think. So I'm asking because Xamarin is a consolidated brand, and I don't know if it's a good idea changing now the name. Well, this is an interesting topic, but by the way, there are other stuff that probably you need to think about it. So we have now this framework included in .NET, and this is a big, well, it's a huge step forward for me. A crazy new. Probably from everything that you are seeing in the screen, you see every directly Maui included in .NET is a big step forward, and it's like what's happened with Mono that will be the runtime will continue working in .NET, and it's not something that will not sit more. So Xamarin, the Xamarin name, will not continue. Xamarin iOS will be .NET iOS. Xamarin Android will be .NET Android. Then Maui is the evolution of Xamarin Forms, also included in .NET. And probably if you have seen the presentation of the past days, you also know that Xamarin Essentials will be system.device. But for me, it's a interesting step forward, and it's have an official framework in .NET related with that is something that share confidence, and is an important step. So you have pros and cons. You lost a name consolidated and used during long time, but you have also a big step. You're moving everything to .NET. So yeah. So Xamarin is 7 now by non.NET developers. Well, probably yes, but this is all work now. Share everything about Maui to non.NET developers. So I think that things like the single project is a good starting point to new developers to start more easy working with all this stuff. Just use VS Code and using the amazing demos that you have seen these days with hot reload and all this stuff. I think that simplifies all the code a lot. Allow you to use XAML or C# or whatever you want to use to start the project. I think that probably will help to non-common Xamarin developers, or including .NET developers, to use Jump and adopt the technology and know it. I know what's your point of view, and you have part of reason in this topic, but I'm just trying to show you that there are pros and cons, like in every decision. So yeah. So you wanted to call this just Xamarin. So, well, I don't know. Just call Maui Xamarin. Probably will cause more confusion, because what's Xamarin? Depending of who you ask it, is Xamarin Classic, using Xamarin Android and Xamarin iOS with native, using native APIs to define the UI. There are people that associate Xamarin with Xamarin Forms, and there are people, I don't know. There are, as always, many options when you choose a brand and a name and all this stuff. But for me, I share my opinion. I like the naming. I don't know. There are always many options, and I don't know. Probably there are other names that many of you prefer, or I don't know. But the important stuff for me is the step forward, use consolidating everything in .NET and use evolving everything in something bigger and biggest, and that's crazy. And that's the point. So, talking about what is Net multi-platform app UI and about the main stuff. Yesterday, David and Shane did an streaming of 3 hours where they talked about the Sling new renderers architecture very well. I think that they talked about 1 hour or 1 hour and a half about this topic. And yeah, to achieve something so well explained like they did, I need more time than the 20 minutes that I still will continue. So I will not just deep a lot in everything. I have heard the code that maybe I could share and talk about some specific parts quickly. But my idea is to share the main change, So let me go here. First thing, like in Xamarin Forms, we opened the repo with different specs. The idea with the spec is exactly the same that the idea with the Xamarin Forms specs. So, for example, we will have transitions in MAUI. So you will have traditional transitions. So we replace one page for other, and we do, I don't know, a slight transition between the page. Or we will have the shared element transition that is used give the hero effect, or the continuity effect. When I tap an item from a list, we take the image from this list and move smoothly to the top side of the detail page. That is the effect that you are seeing here. You have a big definition here with the API, and it's open to discussion. So, well, we are getting some interesting feedback. If you want to participate, please join the conversation. And the same will happen with shadows. So, yeah, we will have brushes, we will have shapes and other stuff related with drawing in forms, but we will continue having default shadows. I mean, have shadows or not. Here we define something more complex, like what's the offset of the shadow, what's the color of the shadow, and all this stuff. So yeah, you can get effects like this, where we have a shadow with a red color, and you can improve this effect. So just take a look to the spec, and if you want anything, or you have any idea, share it. Corner radius. Well, the idea here is very simple. So the idea here is allow to apply corner radius in more views. So why not apply a corner radius in an image? Take a grid and apply corner radius. Yeah, why not? So this is the idea here. Just have a corner radius property and be able to use it in all the properties. The same with borders. The idea is to allow you to set border color and border thickness everywhere. And then we will include a dispatcher API interface using animations for different reasons. One of them is because we want to improve everything related with animations, and not use directly transformations. That is what we're using now in Xamarin Forms. Instead, use in this case the native APIs for animate and get more performance and more smooth animations, but also allow animation with conditions like multi-window application, for example. So take a look to this proposal from Easy and share your feedback. More stuff where we'll remove Android pre-app combat, all Android stuff. Also, we will drop the net standard 1.0 support. We will remove application properties, and this is an interesting one. I told that we will remove dependency service, and the replacement will be the Microsoft extension hosting, and we will use that in MAUI. We have done several tests related with performance, and also we have here a solid definition of what we want to achieve and the possibilities that we want. I think that it's a very long but interesting spec. Of course, as you can see, not everybody is happy, but well, I hope that with this thread and this conversation we get to something solid and improve the actual situation in forms. Well, we use explicit registration. It will simplify a lot renderers, avoiding to use, need to set and scan everything related with renderers and things like that. Probably this will improve a little bit also the performance. We will improve the life cycle. So yeah, I have talked about this with many of you sometimes in events, community, and other stuff. Now we have only the appearing and disappearing events in the page, but what's happening if I'm using a content view? What's happening if I'm using a control? So we are going to add more events when the control is loading, when the control is loaded, when the control is loaded, appearing and disappearing. We are going to unify everything along all the platform to have a solid API working in all the platform in the same way, and giving much more events and much more possibilities to you to manage the life cycle, And then I think that I have covered all the main specs included in the roadmap, except the slim renderer architecture that I'm going to talk about it now. For the rest, well, it's just people suggesting changes, people requesting stuff, and I don't know, different options. So there are things easy to review, probably like take a look to the actual the actual listens, and there are requests more complex or interesting, let me take a look to this. So for example, well, this is another nice conversation about Xamarin, but there are some very simple requests. For example, well, in the first page, one of the last one. Well, you have here more information about single project too. But well, for example, this one, just have an option to have some native icons directly in Maui without need to import I don't know, font awesome or other font. Well, this is a request, and now, well, I have some questions about this topic. Probably will answer tomorrow. But yeah, this is very, very cool because it's a suggestion from someone in the community. Other members of the community continue just talking about the idea, and then we will just join the conversation to search something solid. And there are some very, very nice conversation now here in the repo. So if you want to just join in on one of the conversation of create a new topic and talk about it, just do it. And then, well, this is still a whip, so yeah, it's experimenting. We are experimenting with this concept. Not sure if we'll change too much, probably not, but could change. But let's talk about a new renderers architecture that will be probably one of the main changes at the beginning. So in Xamarin Forms, we have a base element that is visual element. All the Xamarin Forms views inherit from visual element, like a button, and then we implement this button with different renderers in every platform, where all the renderers know very well about the core, in this case, the button definition. In Maui, we want to, well, before jump to Maui, in Forms, everything was very coupled to the MVVM, well, to BW properties, and notify the change of the properties in this way. While in Maui, we want to allow different options like use MVVM in view and other stuff. So for that, we are going to move, and all the controls, all the views definition will be interface. This is one of the changes. The second one is that we are inverting the dependency. So here the renderers knows about the core. Here the cores will know about the renderers. And this is interesting because, let me see if I have the project opened. Yes. So let me try to explain this as better as possible in 5 minutes. I think that in 5 minutes will be complicated, but let me do my best. So we have visual element in forms. That is the the base element defining all the base properties shared across all the views. And if we go, I don't know, let me go for example to Android. In Android, I'm going to the renderers and to try to see exactly the same renderer. For example, the button renderer. So at the beginning in forms, all the renderers use the view renderer. The view renderer at the end is using a visual element renderer, and the visual element renderer in all this case, as you can see here, is using a forms view group. Well, forms view group is a view group from Android, but with small customization from forms. But that means that all the old Xamarin Forms renderer are wrapped by a container. In Android for using a forms view group, in UWP is using a panel, and well, for that probably you have here about fast renderer that we can see here, where if I navigate, well, it's not all the contours, but if I navigate, for example, to the case of, to the button, we are not in this case wrapping anything with a container. We are just mapping the abstraction to a native control. And of course, that reduces the hierarchy of the view, and we are improving the performance just doing that. In Maui, all the renderers will be fast renderer. This is the first topic. And the second one is here in the visual element renderer, we have the property chain handler that is who will, come on, I'm writing, well, who will notify the property chain when a property chain in the case of the renderer. So here we have something here where, well, we have all the property chains, and if the property that has changed is the text, we update the text. Okay, if the property that has changed the text color, we update the text color. But here we see other of the main problems, or well, one of the points where we have here more requests and suggestions. And what's happening here is that, take a look to that, this method is private. So if you want to override the logic of the update text color, what's happened? You need to override the renderer and, I don't know, create a big amount of code to do something simple. So let's take a look now to the Maui that you can find this code in the repo. Okay, this is all the new stuff from Maui, and we have a base view with common properties. All the views, in this case an I button, will override from iView. Well, in this case from iTest, but iTest will override iView. Here we will have a property mapper that will just map between the properties that we have in the interface and the properties in the native control. So if I navigate to the renderers and I go, for example, to the button, well, we have the button here, and we have here, this is the mapper, the property mapper. This says that when the text property of the button change, we can use map to this property. So at the end, in the mapping the property, we are receiving what is the native view, and accessing to the native view, we are setting the text color. And this is interesting because you can do something like this. So if you want to override the color of the button, you can use override the mapper and setting the property to whatever you want. Whatever you want is a method with the name that you want. Must be a static method, but it's the only definition that you need to cover. And then take a look to this. You don't need to register this renderer because, well, it's now, as I said, we inverted the dependencies. So in this case, with the definition, we have access to the renderer. We don't need to do any kind of registration in this case. You know that you will update in this case here the color because why? Well, you define this method, so you define this name. You don't need to worry about, I don't know if you remember in Xamarin Forms what is the old the new element, the old element, and all this stuff. And well, there aren't any base method that you need to worry about. Well, you only have here the renderer. Here you have the definition, can access to the native view, and boom, modify the background color of the native view. And you can do this in the single project in the share code. And well, you only need probably removing comments. You only need four lines of code to override a specific property of any control, or to override any behavior of the control. So we are removing the event subscription that probably is over of the common errors in the custom renderers. Subscribe to events and forget or don't do well the dispose and the subscription of the event. We are going to give this more decoupled renderers that allow you to do the things in a easy way and allow you to extend everything in a faster and easy way without need a big crazy custom renderer. So well, this is a quickly, I would love to spend more time. Probably next week we will use, if you want to continue talking about Maui, we can spend the 2 hours of the streaming just talking about this. But if you want more information, just take a look to 2 streamings, one of them from James Clancy that did an amazing streaming about this stuff on Tuesday, and yesterday the same with David Ortinau and Shane. So if you want to know more about this, just take a look to this streaming, and if you want to continue seeing more, we can organize I create pools to decide what is the topic, and we can continue talking about this on next week. But well, I want to try to give a quick information about this new render stuff. Please join the conversation about what is the mapper, what is the mapper concept, how it works, and well, there are nice feedback by the way at the moment, but you can continue the conversation and join and give any feedback. And with this, we have take a look to Xamarin Forms new features that will arrive soon, well, in the next months, in 4.7 and 4.8. Shape, brushes, app bar, and tab view. Of course, you will receive nice and interesting features in share and other stuff, and of course we continue fixing issues every day and in trying to improve everything. And then about Maui, the repo is open source from the first day. Probably you will see pull requests and stuff, and yeah, continue working on how everything evolve and continue changing and adapting to allow everything that we talked in this table, supporting Vue and VPN and all this stuff. And I think that's all. If you want to continue talking about Maui, I would love to have a specific session about the new Slim renderer, explain everything well, or create one Slim renderer, or talk about MVU and all this stuff. But probably this will be in coming sessions. So I don't know if you have any other question about anything that we have talked, or if you want to share, I don't know, what is your more excited news from Bill, or if you want to talk about anything, now is the moment. So, no new comments. Well, I hope that you have enjoyed this streaming. I really enjoy it because there are a lot of things, a lot of functionality that we have been working in the past time, and it's amazing to be able to use, share, and get feedback from you about all this stuff. So please participate as you want in the official channels. Pin me if you want in social networks, on whatever you want. And as always, I will share a poll soon about the topics of next week. We'll give you 2 or 3 options to choose, and we'll see you on next week. Thank you so much for spending these 2 hours with me, and have a good morning, afternoon, or night, depending on you are. Bye.